Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Star Wars. I'm Retty4, this is Greyjet91,
Hello.
this is Evan95,
Hello.
and this is Jenserai1.
Hello, YouTube.
Lead us in with what we're covering today, Matt.
Okay, so on this episode, we're going to be talking about two separate stories, both of which Antoine didn't have any particular personal interest in, and he's out of town now, so we're covering them without him. And this is like a little bit of what's the expression? You're getting to see how the sausage is made a little bit, like behind the scenes, right? The reason I'm bringing attention to this, where I normally don't, is because if we've been lazy, you might see this earlier than intended. If we've been productive, this will come out when it's supposed to come out. But there's like a difference, this is more closely tied in terms of publication history. This will come later than some of the stuff you may or may not see before this that's released. But in terms of its place in the chronology, it's more closely linked to stuff you guys have already seen, episodes that have already been uploaded. Specifically, I think it was Emissaries to Malastare began with kind of like what I think was like the original planned lead in into this, because that had a council meeting where they talked a little bit about Aurra Singh. But Aurra Singh is actually going to, I'm getting ahead of myself. We have another issue to talk about real quickly before that, which is called Star Crash. We're talking about Star Crash and the Hunt for Aurra Singh, which is an arc. Star Crash is just a singular issue. It came out in February 2001. And we're doing this one strictly for the sake of the completionist trophy, really. I mean, that's just honesty, right?
Yeah.
So, not
who
the
wants to
deepest
take us away
story to discuss.
No.
For whatever reason, this one
It's a
didn't get
one-off.
cut. So yeah, we're keeping it.
Yeah.
Didn't get cut
Yeah.
or followed up on. It is completely self-contained,
Mm.
both in character and in story. Oddly enough, it's one of the few cases where they do that, in this series.
Does anyone does anyone care to just summarize briefly, like really briefly, since that's basically going to be the conversation?
Jedi,
what this
Jedi
even
Knight
is.
goes to planet by no fault of his own, encounters situation that he helps resolve, end story. It's basically just that's it. I know you could attach that to pretty much a lot of the Avengers in Star Wars for sure, but there is no
Princesses,
great.
No, but that's
kings,
literally it.
Yeah, there
giant
is
The fact
robots.
that that's literally it.
Yeah, there's nothing else attached. There's no great like philosophy attached. There's no great story. There's no setup. As you said before, there's no sausage being made here for a future story. It's just this. Evan
It's
before
kinda-
the
it's kinda
recording
like
likened
every
it to
classic-
Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, it's like every classic fantasy Legend of Zelda trope kind of boiled down into one single issue. So for some people, it might like that, but for this, it's a little.
It feels-
Things seem a little out of place.
Mm.
Connor, how about you jump in here? Like, what are your thoughts on this so far?
What the heck was that, Dan? Was that Star Wars Infinities? Or it was like one of those Star Wars Infinities stories, but just got officially published instead of being put in the anthology comics.
It does seem to have that
similar
feel.
like
to-
a thing that should have been
Yeah.
a what if. Or,
Yeah.
this thing that
Yeah.
I could,
belong.
or like in Tales,
Yeah.
That's like
Tales. That's what I was thinking of. I'm sorry. I that was the reason why I hesitated to start talking. I was just trying to think, what the hell was the name of that series? Was it Infinities or Tales? Thank you.
Infinities is the
something,
what
I
if.
think.
Tales is like,
Yeah.
Tales.
Yeah. This feels like something that would have fit in better into the Star Wars Tales series because it is truly just a one-off. I'm not upset that was published as part of the Star Wars Republic line, but it is a bit of an anomaly given that the rest of the series, it's like pretty much every single issue ties into a story arc, whereas this is one of the few that doesn't.
I mean, there's nothing particularly to dislike about this one. It's just such a kind of non-entity compared to the rest of the run. It's not doing anything offensive. It's just this is cool. A little bit of a Jedi romp, and then that's it, done. It's barely qualifies for a single issue.
I mean, I guess it is kind of nice to see that the larger order does have their own adventures, but that's a very surface level sort of, mandate.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, and the only reason why that has any particular value is because of the publication time, because we haven't seen that much of the era.
Yeah.
This is back in 2001. So, especially from today's standards, that interest quickly fades away when you have everything else to compare it to. But the main character, for want of a better term here, is Yoshi, Rafalon, whatever.
More Nintendo coming in here.
When you say Yoshi, yeah, I was gonna say like it's basically just okay. Anyway, so he's I was gonna say Zelda, but it's Link, right? Is the character?
Link
that's
is the
looking for
character, yeah.
princess. Yeah. Clearly, I didn't own a Nintendo growing up. I was excluded from the 90s in so many ways. That was one of them.
Before the commenters say anything,
anyway.
yes, he knows Yoshi isn't from the Zelda series.
Yeah, it's just that I just said like Nintendo though, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, they can capitalize on my ignorance all they want. I don't care. Anyway, we're not really talking about this because of the fact that there's not that much to talk to. He literally like crash lands on a planet. Do we even get the planet's name?
Not sure. I don't think so, actually.
No, I don't think
I
we do.
didn't take it in. It's probably acknowledged in some compendium somewhere, like someone made note of it. But I
And
don't
he meets
know.
up
I'm
with
not
his
gonna pretend to.
princess.
Princess.
Well,
So
first
he
he
finds
crashes,
wolves.
then his lightsaber gets wrecked.
Yes, conveniently.
Right,
Oh,
so
well,
his
I can't have my
lightsaber's
lightsaber, otherwise I'm too OP here. Let's just lose
Yeah.
that.
Oh, it also acknowledges that he's just been knighted, so this is his first mission as a knight.
And yeah,
Well,
I guess not
and when
mission, but like an experience as a knight.
yeah, and as simple a character as he is, as all the characters in this is, you are. He's likable. He's a perfectly decent character. I could envision them building relatively simple stories off the back of him. He's just kind of that, young, simple,
He's just a
lovable
genuine
rogue.
nice guy. Yeah.
He's a good person, but he has like zero character development because there isn't time for any.
Yeah.
So, and I you say likable, and I agree, but he only has like one line that I like, and it's like one of the very last panels. It's on the last page where he has like a sarcastic remark or something like that, where they say, "Oh, I don't think the Jedi do this," and he's like, "Well, it's my first day on the job," or something like that. Like, that's a fun line. That's cool, but
Yeah.
that's about it. Like everything else, it's almost like it's not even really dialogue. It's just like him narrating like anime-esque fashion, like what he's doing the whole time. Oh no, a battle droid. Better stop it.
Particularly early in the comic, it was very much a case of, okay, let's just explain using the old 90s style exactly what I'm doing, what's going on, and why I'm doing it, which was like, oh yeah, a bit clunky. I mean, very clunky. But it kind of drops that in favor of the action, so it doesn't even need to describe it. It's just it goes back into thought process. The other component to talk about is I guess dynamic between him and the princess, because there's kind of like that quasi early
Princess
starting
Lourdes.
relationship. The implication of the comic is that he returns there at some point, maybe as a way of circumventing him in the Jedi Purge. Who knows?
Well,
Perhaps he's still out there.
Oh, the great stories for Yoshi and Lords.
Well, one thing I will say in defense of our boy Yoshi is that even though he's very clearly low level Jedi, fresh out of Padawan hood, just been knighted, the comic does make pretty clear that he is quite capable in his own right. Like, he's not reigning master
Certainly,
level,
yeah.
but at the same time, he is laboring at a disadvantage in that he doesn't have his lightsaber, so he's got to make do with whatever else he can get hold of, and it shows that he is capable of making do.
Certainly, yeah, and the action is fun. It's light and simple, but the way that you kind of make him fight without his lightsaber is entertaining to watch. It's nothing bad for sure.
I like that he takes advantage of his like mechanical skills with the robot to actually repair his lightsaber in that moment. Shows his versatility.
Good
In fact, before we started recording, Connor, you mentioned that he really strikes as that Sentinel balance, and it was a very Sentinel-like tactic what he did. So that's
And
pretty
the
nice.
fact, and the fact that
Also, by the way, there's a giant robot in this.
Yes, yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys want to kind of hammer in on this one? Because apart from what I said, there isn't really anything that strikes me as particularly important.
Only that I think it's like it feels like a pilot for something that was canceled to me.
It does,
because,
yeah.
This
I would agree with
seems
that.
like
Definitely.
and they just stuck it in here instead of like in a Tails thing, which would have made it stick out less. But it's because Lords, when she first meets him, she asks him, "Are you the foreseen?" Like referring to some prophecy that's there, like help her people. And he's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. Of course I am, or whatever." and they go on. They have like their little adventure where she's like being like forced to marry a Jabba the Hutt sort of kind of character. And like they succeed in that not happening, but then at the end, all of a sudden she's like, the foreseen must be a female, it's like, well, why did you think it was him then? Because she just said it like it's not very well written. I'm just going to say that I don't think I feel like this was something where like the production was just very much cut short.
If that Star Crash completes it, guys, I think we can move on to the meat of this episode, which will be Hunt for Aurra Sing. Yeah, sorry if you guys happen to be a particular fan of this comic, but we just think it's kind of worthy of mention, but a little more.
Like you said, there's nothing particularly wrong with it. There's just nothing particularly noteworthy about it either.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything wrong.
I could have seen these characters elsewhere. I could have enjoyed these people in different stories. It's just this one didn't particularly grab me at all.
Yeah. It's a nice little hors d'oeuvre, but not really much more than that.
So leading into
Moving
Hunt
on.
for Aurra Sing then.
Yeah, we start our main course with a rather chilling opening. You get two Jedi and a Padawan, Piercy, Jim Camille, and his Padawan. What's her name?
Zion Amasu.
Zion Amasu. Thank you. Pursuing Aurra Sing at the dead of night in Coruscant.
Yeah, the tone is the biggest shift here. I think this comic as a whole.
All these
sets of comics as a whole. They hold a relatively similar feel to the previous issues we've seen with these characters. It very much feels like it could be a continuation of the same story, but except for this first intro where it is a lot darker, you start to see the explanation for why this character is perceived as such a threat and why she needs to be dealt with here. Because until then, she just seems kind of like one of the standard rogue elements around the galaxy. Here, her threat level is really amped up for us, right in front of our faces.
Can't exactly have a hunt without reasoning.
I agree with that, but I think the tone is consistent because the reason it feels similar is because it's Tim Truman again, and he was writing those issues that he dealt with.
Don't mean to imply that it's jarring at all. It's just you see the kind of the deliberate craftsmanship of it taking that darker shade for that first set. It definitely flows perfectly well and holds that cohesive whole. It's just this is the moment where they're really trying to amp it and focus down on that threat and that tension. I think
I didn't actually mean to contradict you. It's just, I think maybe it was just an incorrect use of the word, maybe like of tone. Because I feel like it. Because if you think about like Acts of War and sort of like the tail end of Emissaries to Malice, there was some pretty dark subject matter that was.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So it that's why I mean it feels like those issues got so chopped up before, and like this would have been tacked on to some of that kind of stuff, even though there's a big interlude between those and this in terms of the publication dates. So this feels more connected to that. I think.
It's not so much what's actually happening on page. It's just kind of the way it's framed and the way it's built. There's that build up to it, like a kind of that horror-esque feel. Not in a great degree, but just lightly applied. Where there's that delay and the separation and what's happened here, that kind of thing.
Never split up.
Never split the party.
Because I think the art it reminds me of Acts of War. I'm not sure if it's the same artist or not.
It's definitely
reminiscent
of it
to me. And it's not my favorite art style. It really isn't. Like the characters look a little too blocky for my taste, but I do like the way that they colored it and shaded it. It looks really that really lends to like the mood and makes everything seem more vivid and just sort of not animated. But just like lifelike as well. It's not the most lifelike style for me. But that kind of breathes life into it.
It gives motion to the narrative.
It's one of the more cartoonish styles of art, but it has that very grounded, realist expression to it. It feels like these people are, as you said, reacting as they would be to any given situation, despite the fact that they have that kind of cartoonish overlay to the model design, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would like to talk about is the contrast in how Aurra Sing is portrayed here in this comic versus in Star Wars The Clone Wars, because in Clone Wars they basically took away her Force abilities and her lightsaber, and they kept her hatred of the Jedi, but they basically reduced her to exploiting Boba Fett to get at the Jedi. And they did that to emphasize how evil she is, but they reduced her threat level to such they completely nerfed her as a character, because this sequence alone right here makes very clear Aurra Sing doesn't need to exploit Boba Fett to get at Jedi. She's perfectly capable of ambushing and killing them herself. She's basically like the proto-Grievous.
And right down to the lightsaber collection we just made.
I was about to say, like, in more ways than one.
Yeah, I completely agree, but and I don't know that much about Clone Wars or behind the scenes, but I've heard people say that was a Lucas decision, so I won't hold that against them if that's his call. I still think it's a bad call, but it's beyond their ability if that rumor is true.
Yeah.
So getting back to the main story, we get to the Jedi discovering a group of butchered Republic peace officers. Again, very displayed in a very gruesome fashion with all the blood, and unfortunately they end up splitting the party, and we get our first main action scene.
I made note of when they said, you know, oh my god, they took out an entire Republic party. Is that really a big deal? I mean, a Padawan could do that, guys. Maybe not focusing on that part of the story or that part of the problem.
Well, that comes up in the council meeting. That doesn't come up here.
No, but just the fact that it is focused on after the fact, and then the way they're reacting to it and stuff, it does kind of feel a bit like maybe not the best thing to hammer on. But what I do like,
well, they don't have clones and battle droids at this point in timeline, so they have to kind of do what they can to big up a threat as much as they possibly can in the setting.
Makes sense at this point in publication. But I like the when they do split up. I like the tension that's built when I can't remember his name, the other Jedi present.
Piercy,
yes. Yeah, I should remember it. He says it enough times.
Yeah, he talks of himself in the third person.
Yeah, and when he interacts with the soldier that's been kind of caught up and tied and left for the trap. I like.
Also,
the
before that,
of,
sorry. I just want to mention before that we get the whole Zion and the whole Republic soldiers joining the Force thing, where she sort of tries to justify the slaughter.
Oh, yes, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I was completely lost in what you meant then. Yeah, no, you're very true. Yeah, that's important to note here.
I just wanted to get to that before we got to the main fight. Sorry.
No, right, because it makes sense and fits to the end of it. Bookmarks, yeah. Before we get to that point, though, yeah, we have that mention of the joining the Force, because it's a
very innocent, childlike, but also very wise way of justifying it, which is her master even points out. You know, it's kind of having one of those wise beyond your years sort of moments, and I like it because she's sort of taking the whole, well, you know, it's kind of like when a loved one dies, you're sort of trying to be like, oh, they're in a better place now, sort of thing.
You know, it's
I like seeing that from the Jedi point of view, you know.
Yeah, and it warms his heart, which is nice to see. But what I like about it the most is that it sets up the kind of bookend of the end of it, because this particular moment didn't really do much for me. I was like, it's a bit cheesy, whatever. Moving on, Jedi. At the end of it, though, that when it comes back and the fact that Aurra was watching this and kind of plays on it after the fact to kind of strike up some more fear. That was when it resonated. I thought, okay, that setup was worth this payoff, because it kind of bigs up that there's a very brief kind of spark of connection between Aurra and the Padawan Zion, who's just it's not meant to go anywhere. It's not like they're not going to ever build up an arc or a story on it or anything on it, but it shows that kind of personal bitterness and resentment that Aurra feels for the Jedi. It's not just this grand philosophy of, oh, I hate Jedi in general. It's no, these people and their ways infuriate me.
Especially the whole master Padawan bond is something she's particularly keen on trying to break down.
Yeah,
given her
basically because she never really had it for herself. That in a lot of ways is one of the reasons for why she's so pissed at the Jedi Order overall. She got saddled with the Dark Woman, the master who's known for beating the hell from her students, and because of that, she never she was never really exposed to how compassionate Jedi are supposed to be, because before she was apprenticed under the Dark Woman, she was known to push everyone else away and be a bully. And after she was apprenticed under the Dark Woman, who is basically a stone wall of a person. So it's the fact that she was denied what everyone else gets to have, and she's furious about that.
And all of this works, both the tension and the horror style action and the actual character work. Yeah, all of this works very effectively to set up the purpose of this character and the presence of her in the story and the effect that she's having and has had on all of the characters in it. I like that this isn't just kind of this throwaway prologue to set the scene. This is actually something that really does establish the emotion and the kind of theme behind the rest of the story that's going to unfold. It's very effective because it's not too long and it's not too short. Definitely doesn't outstay its welcome, but it does just enough to kind of make the rest of what's going to happen really matter to us.
That said, Jimmy Keel does actually put up realistically a much better fight than anyone I think would expect.
Oh yeah, he definitely lasts longer than I expected. Definitely lasted longer than I remembered. I thought, two strikes and he's out, but nope, he actually does put up a good fight.
Scores a hit.
Well, I like that because he's the equivalent of like a red shirt, and at the same time, he's a Jedi Master and he goes out like a Jedi Master. So it makes her more competent as a threat as well, because she takes him out through an underhanded way, like kind of literally actually underhanded, by like producing a second lightsaber from out of nowhere, because he was kind of stalemating her, like when it was just the 2 blades involved instead of the 3.
Which is
But yeah,
interesting because you kind of have that symmetry with how she took out Sharad Het earlier.
A bit, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and she earns these. It's not like they're complete giveaways, but she's definitely not. She's not inclined to fight fair, She's pragmatic, I guess you could say, and willing to go as far as it takes.
Yeah, another part of the character that is set up here. It's not just the massive emotional stuff; it's the practical in front of our face. What is she capable of? What's she going to be able to do? It's just a very effective intro sequence for me. I enjoyed it as much as you can watch the slaughter of Jedi.
Well, the end of it as well, like when we talk about like her issue, or her honing in on like the Master Padawan bond. I think Connor said that like she's furious about not having had that. I actually don't think that she's even aware of what the other side is. I think that I don't think she has really an awareness of what's wrong with her as a person. I think she's really psychologically damaged, and she's just trying to sabotage everybody because she hurts that much, which is like a common theme.
I think it's also the fact that she refuses to acknowledge that there's anything wrong with her, because it's another thing that people like that always do. It's never my fault. It's always someone else's. All of my problems are the result of the Dark Woman. There was nothing intrinsically wrong with me because, well, they just can't stand to look in the mirror.
Right. I mean, there's definitely, Anya did something wrong. I'm not saying that she's blameless. There's always, like, in a situation like this, some of the blame has to go to the teacher, but this is her only known failure is this student. So there's something intrinsic in Aurra that, or maybe not intrinsic, maybe that's the wrong. There was something bred into her that had nothing to do with the Jedi or Anya specifically. When you put that force in the same beaker as Anya Kira and applied heat, it was a bad reaction. You know what I mean? It was just like, it was a bad combination.
It's interesting.
She was the wrong person, but she's also a damaged person on her own.
Agreed. I mean, she was put with her for a reason, and we don't really get to find out that reason other than the fact that she was a difficult student, and that obviously those people go to Onikuro. But I get the feeling that she was the wrong choice. She was the wrong solution for this particular problem on the Jedi's on the Jedi's front. They should have put her with someone more focused on compassion and just general mental health, I guess. Because whether or not that would have been as effective, we don't know. But I think that was probably the better chource than putting her with the Dark Woman for this particular case.
She needed a Qui-Gon Jinn.
That kind of sort of more lenient, go with the flow type. Because the kind of pressure that the Dark Woman brings, which is extremely effective in the right place, didn't work for whatever reason with Aurra Singh. So
it can be breaking.
Absolutely.
And also before we move on from this,
like a sword.
Yeah. And we can move on from this very soon, because we've talked about this for a bit. But you mentioned Kellen, and I don't disagree with you. I get what you're saying, that they weren't trying to like build up an arc here, like between Xian and her master Jamiko or anything. But even though there's no arc, her character, she carries this baggage, like, because she's a recurring character.
Yes.
So it's like I like that it continues to be something that affects her, even after other writing teams later in the timeline, whatever, are dealing with her. They deal with that emotional trauma that this had on her, and it's a part of her growth as a character.
Absolutely,
and the example she sets for others.
I mean, Heart of Fire, one of my favorite short stories in Star Wars. It has deals with this directly afterwards, and that's definitely continued. And I absolutely love that. It's even mentioned in this issue when they talk in the council that it's going to take months of treatment to kind of break this trauma, because she is a young child. She may be a Jedi Padawan, but she's a young child. But yeah, it was just the bond between the two that doesn't get put anywhere, which I kind of think is appropriate as well. Right. It's not even a criticism. It's just I like what they managed to achieve with these two without the need to back a story up on it.
But then we have the council meeting where they talk about like sort of the this event in post and what they're going to do about it. And it's less bonkers than the other one, but I still feel like Mace seems weird to me.
Yep.
I don't know why. It's hard to place my
Very
finger on exactly why.
confrontational.
Yeah,
that's why it rubs for me personally.
He's also kind of doesn't know which side of the argument he sits on, which to me is not Mace. It's like he argues against certain positions, and then when somebody points out, like, well, what about this? He goes, yeah, well, that's another point why you shouldn't do this. And it's like, well, is it though? Because that's the opposite what you say. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a
not much consistency to it.
Yeah. I don't know. He's the only thing that's sort of really off for me. In that it's not like the greatest council scene ever, but he's the one odd component for me that I don't really like.
Also, did Anya Kuro teleport into the council chamber?
I think
Yeah,
not.
she does.
Because they're all surprised when she gets there, and you need to take an elevator to get there, which
I just thought
they would
she
notice.
came
So
through
did
the
she
door
teleport there
unannounced.
just for effect?
She definitely came through the door, and this is how the scene plays. But yeah, you're right in that she just kind of walks in on the page completely out of nowhere. With
And
no
Yoda's just
announcement.
the shot of Yoda of him being surprised is hysterical.
Yeah, Yoda's here is a bit weird. It's like he has one good line that I remember that was poignant for him. Talking about the inclusion of Asherad, which I liked. But apart from that, he was kind of like he was left sort of sidelined on this one. Talking about someone else left sidelined though, it's not a big deal, but I called attention to it because it made me laugh. Plo Koon, who often says nothing in these scenes, it's kind of a part of his nature on the council, to the point where it's mentioned on his wiki. But he keeps getting put in the center of the frame in the background and saying nothing. He's like, he's the only character that perpetually comes up in every single panel.
Too.
Yeah, he's like,
Like,
and you can see he's paying attention and just saying nothing, which I find comically amusing for the character.
They wanted it to be as authentic to the movie as possible, Callan.
Yeah.
Hey,
the other one, of course, is... sorry, yeah?
I have a question. Yeah, I just have a question because my brain is kind of asleep right now. Aside from Kiadi, does anybody sitting on the council right now have an active Padawan?
Does
Yeah,
Addy
another
at this
two.
point, doesn't she? With Siri? Or is this past that stage?
Yeah, Siri,
Well, this is around the time when Obi-Wan's a knight.
Yeah, so it's unconfirmed whether or not she would have been knighted herself at this point, I suppose. But it would have been around that
Yeah.
idea, that stage, for sure.
but all the rest have already trained.
I thought
It's,
so.
yeah, it's just, so it's just
kind of
Kiadi.
like, but I do kind of like the setup though. Like, not that it's always the case, but just the idea that if a Padawan's master sits on the council, they stand next to their chair and sort of sit in on it. I like that.
I like that idea as well. That would
It's
be
a
really
nice
cool.
idea.
Yeah.
It's definitely not implemented anywhere in the lore, as far as I'm aware. But I would have liked it if it had been, because
Yeah.
just the idea of any knight getting to stand in on occasion, like Kiadi has done. He stood in for a master when they were absent previously. But just the idea of them getting to kind of stand as their right hand men or women, it's just I like the idea.
I think it just makes sense, especially for somebody like him, and it would have made more sense for Anakin, who's like a special case, to be able to feel more at home, or just to see the inner workings of that room instead of being intimidated by wondering what's going on in there all the time.
Yeah, it's a very nice idea. It would have had a lot of story potential as well, a lot of character ideas for them having to sit there quietly, not say anything, and reminisce after the fact with their masters. Why was this said? Why was this thought? Very cool idea.
Yeah, but we get Anya, asking to be the one to hunt Aurra Singh, and she gets denied by Mace Windu, so Kiadi Mundi volunteers to go in her stead.
Yeah, and she oddly goes along with this. Like at this point, it makes it feel like she's not storming out angrily, but just walking out and deciding, well, I'll just do it anyway. And then she goes off into kind of exile for a bit and does the meditation on her planet that she's fond of, and that's it. Until she actually gets found by Anya herself, that she would have had no place in this story.
It's a little bit of a weak setup, because I agree with that. I think it would have made more sense, not for her to go renegade necessarily, but for her to just be like, you guys need me. I know her better than you do, because that makes more sense. And I also there is the through line that is this them saying no is the same reason why they didn't send Eathcoth after Sharad had, and there's the same writer. So I can understand their reason for saying no, because that's at least consistent with what they presented so far. But just add more people to the mission. Don't exclude her from it. Like, that would make more sense to me. You know what I
Agreed.
mean?
Yeah, and it would have been so easy to just have her, sneak on board the ship before they leave the temple, and have them like, just, I'm ignoring the council mandate here. You need me, and then the people present to be the ones that agree.
Or that.
It would have been fine.
Yeah.
Anything could have worked, and it wouldn't have really changed the ultimate conclusion that much, because they don't need to have her be the target when they go to the planet. There's already a ready-made reason for Aurra to be there. So,
And if you want to get technical, Kiadi Mundi does have history with Aurra Singh, not as much as Anya, obviously,
sure,
but there is still a connection there.
and they bigged up the connection with Asherad here as well. The entire reason they're not sure he should go is because of his potentially conflicting feelings. And I like how that's handled in this comic. How he's He's being honest
like
in
how
this
he-
moment
yeah,
when he
go
says
ahead.
that. He's being honest in this moment when he's saying that he doesn't want to go for revenge or any dark emotion, and obviously they can detect
Yeah.
that. But it's the case that they bring up that point of right in front of her, locking blades with her. Would you feel the same way? And he says, I think I would. I would not profane my master's or my father's memory with such base actions. And I really like that. And then the ultimate conclusion of that as well. I buy his entire presence in the story.
Mm-hmm.
One I don't find as smooth in this moment is Adigalia, who just kind of sticks up and, well, I guess I'll go as well. So, okay.
Yeah.
Females tell you the species. We should act on that. It's like that's literally the entire reason. It's
Yeah.
very
It also feels
awkward.
like if you would have just accepted the one that wanted to go in the first place, it would have made her even more redundant.
Yeah.
Well, at least
Yeah.
2 females.
I can't
Twice
even
as
think.
deadly.
I can't even think of an out of universe reason for her inclusion because
Well, they were trying.
because she
Was it
was in
because she was
stuff
trying
at
to?
the time.
Yeah, she was trying to be bigged
it
up
came
at
out
this point.
2001.
Yeah.
She'd been in the video
Yeah.
game.
The video game, and she was in the books with the
I guess so.
with
And they'd
the
already-
Master Syria and such.
They'd already dealt with her again, the same writer in Emissaries, where she came.
True.
She belonged on that one, but
Mm.
she was one of the only ones that belonged on that one. And here she's going where she doesn't really need to go. But yeah, it's probably just.
And she's a diplomat, guys. Didn't you know?
Yeah, that's
you are
horrible,
the
isn't it?
diplomat.
Yeah. What does that matter when you're dealing with Aurra Singh? I mean,
You're not going to talk her down, so it's you might as well give up on that front.
Mm. But she does both one of the most and least on this mission as well. So take that for whatever it's worth.
We'll
She
get to
at least
that.
makes her presence known.
mhm.
Yeah. But then we
No, like
so
her. It's just kind of baffling. It's just not necessary, like we said.
Agreed. Yeah, I have no
Moving
problem
on
with it being
from
here.
that.
It's just odd. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we
we
cut
get
to the
the
planet Talus with Aurra Singh fighting some droidicas, which, interestingly enough, the droidicas here, they're uniquely designed in the sense that they have one blaster arm and one arm that's a blade.
yeah.
which
It
you don't-
stands out. Yeah, because you don't see that very often at all. Well, or ever.
No, that's
outside.
very... I honestly can't think of any other instance where that's been the case. Can any of you guys?
No.
No,
I'm curious what the reasoning behind that was. I was wondering, is there like a video game or something? Or I don't
I just
I think
imagine
it
it was
was-
just a creative choice. Let's see what we can do to make this a bit more interesting. I mean, she's using blades after all, and they're not supposed to be attacking her from range here. The idea is they're supposed to kind of test metal, as it were. Hence the lack of shields. One thing that was odd though is that they're mentioned as being more expensive than a planet, and I'm like, that's got to be an exaggeration. That makes no sense. That's Harry Potter breaking levels of economy.
a very shitty planet. Like
Yeah.
like don't be imagining like all Corellia or something.
The
a shitty
worse
planet.
than even 5 times worse than even Tatooine. It
deep
would have to
outer
be.
rim, very, very, very small.
And not barely even qualifies as one like a Pluto. But yeah, it was just an odd line that I found odd. But I do like the way that they explain. They kind of get out of her killing them, which is like, no, it was just a test. It was just a test, please. If it wasn't a test, we would have given them shields, and then he probably would have been dead. And it's like, yeah, okay, I can buy that.
Which, to be fair, good way to set up the Droidica's threat level.
Yes, yeah, because they
As a general force, because they're seen as like the ultimate, destroyer.
where are those droidicas? Yeah, I completely agree. But the main point of it is that they're tempting her into service for the emotional connection. One thing I did find odd though is they go into weird depth with this guy's backstory. Like the way they describe these two
Yes,
and their
big
whole
dialogue,
their
heavy
shtick,
dump moment.
and the flashback and everything is like this is unnecessary. We do not need to know this much about these characters. For me, it was a lot of pages devoted to this.
I think.
I
it
mean,
was
I
something
wouldn't
where
so much
they-
mind it if it came up later, but these characters literally don't show up ever again.
Yeah,
I
it's like
think
another bit
throughout
of
the rest
setup
of
that
the
never got any
story.
payoff.
I think it's all fine, and you wouldn't notice it if we were dealing in a novel here. But
Yes,
the fact
yeah.
that it's like a comic, and I think it's the fact that, they're just. It doesn't feel. It feels like it came after they were telling a story that already involved every other character, and they were kind of shoved in here to just make a spot where all points would converge.
Mm.
They don't. It would have made more sense if this had all just been traced back to the senator, like who could have just been the singular, like, shady character, you know what I mean, instead of involving these other two.
Especially given what we know about Teeks from elsewhere in the lore.
Mm-hmm. He did have a cameo in the Darth Plagueis novel.
Like his blurb in some like visual dictionary said, "This senator is shady."
Built off the back of this story in particular. Yeah, I didn't realize it came up in Plagueis though. It's phone under my radar.
It's also I feel like, because like I've seen like low budget movies where I'm convinced this sort of thing has happened, where they spend so much time on like a prop that was used in one scene, but the scene ends up being completely pointless, but they keep it in the movie because they spent so much money on this prop that they're like, well, we're not getting rid of that, which I think is what happened with the blue milk scene in Last Jedi. I think because that was real. They built that prop. They spent money on that, and then I think they saw, oh, this is terrible, but we're not getting rid of that. Yeah. But anyway, so I think that at some point when you're writing this, like they probably realize this is boring, like, you know, the amount of pages that we're doing, but we've already drawn all these panels and we have nothing else. Just keep it there, you know. To answer like why they went into such detail, I think it's probably that.
Yeah,
and I completely agree with you, right, about the
this
idea of it being working in a novel. You know, it's only because it's comic book page. You know, it's very, it's very. You know, you have to keep this stuff clear for the very efficient stuff if you want to get the full effect. And this is
when you say when they've established a character as mysterious and just sort of mercurial and frankly weird as the Dark Woman, especially in this time when we really don't know that much about the Jedi as a whole or her, because we haven't got her really proper character yet, which came in like Tales and the later Clone Wars, like when she became Anya Kiro instead of Dark Woman. If you're going to get a character that weird involved in these people, like in their story, there has to be a backstory. So they kind of tied their hands to going more elaborate than they otherwise would need to if this had been any other Jedi. Any other Jedi could have just been involved, but not her. You know what I mean?
Which is weird because, you know, comic book pages are, you know, such valuable real estate. You know, you can't just waffle on with these ones.
Well, but they do, especially this guy. Like he wrote Emissaries to Malastare. That was nothing but that.
That's true. That was a story. That was waffle. That was just the story.
Waffle the story.
But anyway, moving on to the next point.
Aurra mulls in space about how much she's like looking forward to killing Anya.
We get our first ever shot of her in her Jedi garb, which is interesting.
I can't believe she still has this picture. I kind of like it, but it just seems like she would have. Yeah, this moment would have. She should have done that years ago.
Precisely, this moment would have happened a long time ago. But I guess there was. You can kind of buy it. It's one of those things where, because of the placement in the story, it's like, okay, well, if you had this level of hatred for her, you wouldn't have kept it around as a keepsake.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
it's corny.
But at the same time, because it's the first time that she's kind of resurfaced in your life, it kind of still works to an extent. It's not breaking, you know, the scene or anything. It just seems a bit. Oh, that's odd.
The other thing to consider is maybe just the idea that literally the reason why Aurra has this picture is so she can destroy it over and over again. Like, just have a printout of Anya Kiro so she can stab it with a knife.
It's the weekly.
That like, sounds silly, but I would not put that past Aurra Singh. You know, just to get that emotional enjoyment from crushing things from the past. But yeah, we get the cut back then to the Jedi, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, please pull over. We're going to arrest you. We would like you to stop, so you don't have to do this. That's going to work.
Yeah,
but
and those big freaking cruisers again.
I hate those things.
Which we've established are not. No, there's a space battle here, and they get their asses kicked because it's like one of the most unmaneuverable, just things you could ever put into a space battle like this in an asteroid belt, no less.
I know. I have always hated these cruisers. They are completely useless. They must cost a fortune because they get wrecked every 5 minutes, and they're usually unarmed. It's like, can you please give them something better than this?
Emissaries to Malastare, the only review we've ever done where one of these hasn't gotten destroyed.
And that wasn't even it wasn't even part of the mission there. Every time it gets involved in the actual action, it goes out in seconds.
I was going to say the only reason for that was because the threat level was so low that it couldn't have been unless the Jedi crashed it.
The funny thing is that one bit of lore is that these specific cruisers are colored bright red specifically to signify that they have diplomatic immunity and that you shouldn't fire on them. But the problem is that as the galaxy's been becoming increasingly hostile as the Republic's broken down, instead it's just turned into bright red is an easy target.
Correct me if I'm wrong also. Is this particular one blue, or is that Aura's ship?
That's
Aura's ship.
I couldn't remember, right, yeah. Because that would be amusing if that was the case. So you forgot to paint it.
I mean, at the very least, they had her outgunned. It's just when she got into like her, personal like little cruiser or not cruiser,
fighter.
little fighter, like a little fighter. She had like the maneuver. She was able to outmaneuver them like with absurdities.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I do. While I
she-
don't like the fact that they fell for this so easily, I do like the idea that she was planning this. You know, I like it's a good setup for her character as much as a distraction it is from theirs. So yeah, that was effective.
Yeah, but so it gets completely destroyed, and they jettison in a space pod, and then they're picked up by a Mon Calamari cruiser, Quarren design, which
Ceremonial.
just so happens. Yes, I like how Asherad recognizes it, where Addie's like, she praises him for that, and I like how his response is, "I had a good teacher."
Yeah.
And then Kiadi, for some reason, follows that up with, "That remains to be seen," which kind of comes off as
deprecating.
you know.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of him being an Obi-Wan in that moment. It's like, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how this mission goes, because he's not too sure about his whole revenge thing yet.
The thing I liked about that exchange was that anytime that they used one another's names, it was less stiff and awkward than it was in the previous arcs. It
Yeah, well, they
came
don't
across
say the
more-
entire thing. Yeah.
I
They
think
do a couple times, but it's always earned, and for the most part, they don't say it at all, or it's just like you said, just either the last, like Master whoever or Asherad, instead of like their full name, instead of it like announcing to the reader who these characters are. It's like they're not dumbing down, or they're not insulting our intelligence anymore. They know we can tell who's talking to who.
Yeah, because that's always been really irritating, not just in Star Wars, but in comics in general when they do that. But they do it a lot for the Jedi, irksomely.
They dialed it back here though, so that's nice.
Fortunately.
Yeah. So they interact with Tychus, and we get another dialogue heavy moment where he's trying to play coy with his purchase, and they're not buying it for a second, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, and Addy kind of steps back from the diplomat role at this point. This is like, you didn't need to know that we're council masters to save us. And then Kiadi's like, whoa, yeah, but to be fair, he did save us anyway, so let's leave it at that for now. She's like, come on, can you maybe just be a decent person? Thanks for saving us, but does this really matter? Because he's not particularly favourable towards them until he finds out they're on the council, which I appreciate from the idea of a senator character in particular, because political presence. These people are like huge in the galaxy, and I've just saved two of them.
Yeah, Asherad being Sharad's son also has some leeway to that, given
That
his
as well.
reputation.
Yes, yeah, of course.
Which I have to imagine is false because of how crooked this guy is. But he's just using that like as an excuse to be more interested. Like inside, he couldn't possibly actually care about that.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
But they land on the planet.
That's just Republic senators in general.
Well,
by and large, yeah, by and large,
bad ones.
Too many.
How many?
To which there are many in this. Well, in this era, not too many, but
there's a lot. But there's a lot of senators. So yeah, I admit they're like outmanned, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're all this bad. You know what I mean? I mean, considering that this faction eventually goes separatist levels of corrupt. But in any case, I think most of them are just more useless, than outright terrible people.
Agreed.
But anyway,
we cut to the next issue of Anya Kuro being on the planet that she kind of uses as her little safe haven whenever she goes off, isolation and all that.
I like and don't like this. I don't like the dialogue or the way she's phrasing anything, basically. But like, there's a moment here that could have worked for me. I kind of like the self-reflection and the place and the way that the art is, but the language doesn't fit for me.
Agreed.
Yeah, the way she explains like the natural cycle of the planet just comes off as like, okay, why are you?
Well,
it's too stiff. Yeah, this could have been
Like, why are you
poetic.
thinking
It could have
in
been a
this
really
way?
powerful moment, and visually, I think it's very effective with her standing on the hilltop and the storm, the meteor storm coming down. Very, very good. But the setup was all there. But it's just the actual writing itself is like, okay, you're explaining this too stiffly for the sake of expedition that come up later. Exposition, sorry.
And then
they want
just
to
like
justify the meteor value thing.
Yeah, the plot convenience of the her just being there, like that could have been bypassed, like we said, if she'd been a part of the mission.
Yeah,
from the
you have
start.
an entire galaxy, and this just so happens.
I mean,
And they all
more
land
than anything
here.
else,
Like they all land in the same spot
exactly
as well.
the same space. But more than anything else, though, it's the timing. I mean, this if this had been a few years later, it made more sense. But the hunt just started, and then, as far as we can tell, the next day they happened to set up a trap for the exact two characters that are attached to it. It's just odd.
Or if they had established that she and Aurra used to come here and that Aurra picked the place, but that's not what happened. So I mean, it's just not
even better. the Dark Woman was aware of this whole connection with the person in the past, and she set the entire thing up as a trap to lure Aurra in, and that was her contribution to the mission when she joined. If you let me in, I can find her in seconds, and we can trap her in days. Your month-long hunt will become days, and that could have been a thing that she used that connection to lure Aurra onto the planet, and that's why they're here. But it was a missed opportunity, I think.
It's yeah.
I mean, really, anything would have been more fluid than what we got.
Yeah, it was a bad call. I think maybe rush deadline. I don't know, but actually, the whole thing kind of feels like. Again, I've referenced this before leading up to this episode, but not in this episode. I think because this is basically the last time that Ki-Adi-Mundi is like the star.
Yeah.
Like,
Straight
period.
into
Really. Like, I mean, he shows up.
after this.
Yeah, he does show up and does a couple of important things during like the Clone Wars issues, but he's not the star, So I mean, it feels like somebody said, "Well, we need to kind of wrap up this character a little bit before we just jump ship," which I'm glad they did. But this whole thing just feels a little bit not completely slapped together. It's not that bad, but it just feels a little bit more truncated than it should be, given the build-up.
Agreed. There's a lot of characters involved, and while they don't all need a particularly powerful presence, the fact that there's this disparity between how much they are bringing to the table. It kind of highlights those that are hanging in the background a bit more. And Ki-Adi's only real reason for being here is that he happens to be the master of Asherad. On a narrative level, obviously, in the actual story, there's a reason he's the one who knows her the most after Dark Woman. But yeah, there's no reason for us to know that, okay, they chose this character for this story because it's only because he's connected to Asherad.
So Aura's scoping out the place. She sees that Anya is here, and she plots her evil doing in silence, or like away from everybody.
She broods.
Yes, the Jedi landing party gets there, and just they find, what is it called again? Qualdrunium,
something like that.
Yeah, which is like a rare mineral that falls from the sky and mixes with the planet, which is very valuable. Which, by the way, this, I don't know why, but this little bit of dialogue where one of the guards refers to Asherad as like a Tuscan savage. Like, I can't believe they could be trans. Like, first of all, how would he even know about what Tuscans are?
It does
that come off as strange to anyone?
The Tuscan Raiders.
It's purely
How would he know? How would he know that though? And it's also it's not like the way Asherad's drawn in this series. In this arc, it's not like he looks that different from a human.
Yeah,
so it's like
it definitely
nothing
does
about
seem
him
like
comes off as being savage, like whatsoever.
It was just a case of, let's make a racist line for the sake of trying to see what the reaction would be in the group.
Yeah,
there's no real reason for him to actually know this. They're not that. They're
That's
not
what I mean.
that famous in the galaxy for sure.
It's fine. It's fine in itself, but then you think about it for a minute. I was like, wait, like that doesn't make any sense.
It's not something that particularly bothers me, but it's definitely a weird moment.
I mean, they're not a secret, like they're just not. They don't bother anybody except people on Tatooine. But I can buy that he's been there or talk to people who have been, especially because they're shady. They're all shady people. Tatooine shady as hell.
It is discussed throughout the expanded universe that Tatooine actually has a lot more pull and significance than Luke frames it in the original movie. It's still a major hub for trade.
Yeah, no, I can understand. Sure. I can buy this character knowing this. It definitely does seem odd. It's a weird
for me
moment.
If to be called out, I get calling him out for like treating Asherad that way. It would have made more sense had he made that line back on the ship instead of like after we've been around each other for a while. Like that would have made more sense.
If I'd spent time on the actual travel to the planet itself.
Like, oh, a Tuscan that speaks basic? That's weird. Like, or something like that. Like when he first met him, but now it's weird. I agree with that much.
Qualdrunium.
So basically, Tychus sends his guards out to scope the place, and one of them finds some money that he just decides to pick up because that's not suspicious at all.
Coins on a jungle planet that's supposed to be completely deserted and uninhabited. It's like, what are you doing, man? You deserve everything that comes to you.
Pretty much. Pretty bad.
Yeah, that was really stupid. If it had been like
Quarren guards ever.
If it had been a bit of open, Qualdrunium, then sure, fine, makes sense. But just open
like actual money.
Yeah.
In his defense, I have nothing to say. You can move on. Anyway, so yeah, that happened. It's kind of reminiscent of even though this came before this actually, so it's not a ripoff of the scene on Yavin where Asajj in the micro series was taking out the clone troopers that came with Anakin. It's sort of like a less cool version of that.
Yeah, it does feel that way.
And then there's not that it's bad. I just mean that was way more cool. It was more like a compliment to that than a criticism of this. Aside from the money thing. But then just like sort of just a bunch of mayhem happens because then like a bunch of them step on mines and like instantly die. This is really good
As
reconnaissance.
one does when they step on mines. Yeah, brilliant reconnaissance. But I suppose they're not exactly the most trained people in the universe. But yeah,
it's just funny
the
because
reaction.
it feels like they're all watching this happen as well. Like they're, okay, reconnaissance team away, and like 10 feet away, they blew up. It's just like
actively on
oh
page.
my god, yeah.
It's like the Jedi are just like, ugh, must we do everything before setting off themselves? When Anya Kuro shows up as well, and the soldiers react, it's like, oh my god, no, she is not going to get hit by a blaster bolt shot from one of these random thugs. This is ridiculous. This is either
just instantly crumple.
This is either to get her out of these next few pages, or they need a reason to show off her healing ability. There is no other reason for this.
Yeah.
I give her this much. He's standing next to Kiadi Mundi, and she didn't expect an attack. But yeah, sure. Like, I mean, it's better than nothing. But I agree, it's a very flimsy defense.
And then we get Aurra coming in, Aurra finally making her appearance, kills a few guards, and then we get.
Now this is dumb. Now this is stupid. She's got a rifle.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna kill you," instead of just killing them. just kill them. You know,
not very. Doesn't come off very professional.
Yeah,
does it?
But yeah, it's just her in a more emotional state. I guess it is a weird moment. The best part about this scene for me, though, is the absolute joy of seeing Adigalia just nail Aurra with a giant boulder, and goodbye. Doesn't even get like a glancing blow. It's a full-on smack to the face in an instant. I loved it.
It's one of the few major force feats we get for her, really.
But just the matter-of-fact nature of it. This is the diplomat. This is the person who resorts to words first. It's just like, oh, hi, rock, wham. This is why I'm here today.
She's speaking words as she's throwing it, so technically, it's aggressive negotiations.
Yes,
Callan.
very aggressive negotiations.
I mean, that's
she
that's
is a Form 5 specialist, so you know.
Well, just the fact that it's like, I've heard of you.
Peace through superior firepower, or in this case, peace through a bigger rock.
I mean, it's the equivalent as if like Obi-Wan had done that while saying hello there instead of like. It's like that's not very. I mean, kind of defeat the purpose of making your greeting there. But anyway.
I love the moment though, and the attention to detail of her just being splayed around the rock as she's thrown back. Like, it was just so satisfying to see. It's like, thank you for giving a Jedi a hit on one of these arsehole characters.
Yeah, or it takes her lumps over time. It takes a while sometimes, but she does.
So they split up.
Aurra survives this and comes back swinging very quickly afterwards in the story is it in itself damn impressive, because. Well, come on. If someone threw a boulder that sized into your face, which of you guys would be alive afterwards?
So it's a lot for Force Walls.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. But then this is a weird moment, because the group then for some reason splits up because they absolutely urgently must find the Dark Woman immediately and can't do that before moving on to Aurra, saying they have to split up to do it. And we have Adi wandering off to be completely irrelevant for the rest of the story, and Kiadi going to find the Dark Woman and spending way too much time once he's found her. This was very awkward in the writing stage for me.
She scares him again.
Yes, yeah.
I feel like this would have played better if they'd established that more time had passed. And if people had to travel further to meet up with folks. But this all feels very like it's right in the same area.
Agreed. So they're all within 2-minute walk of each other, like as far as the max from what we can see on page.
Yeah, so I agree that it's a very odd setup, and it's kind of there to like reintroduce like the dynamic between Anya and Kiadi, and sort of a hint at where the story goes in the end, and talk about Aurra and the threat that they're facing. But we've been talking about that the whole time. We don't really need to see it again. So yeah, it could have been
kind of pointless filler.
It's not horrible, but yeah, I agree that it's more filler than anything else, and could have been better spent elsewhere.
It's a slight waste of the opening sequence in particular as well. It's the fact that we had such a strong opener for establishing Aurra and why they need to deal with her in such a such immediate manner. because we've had all of that, this therefore stands out as being more severely unpleasant than it would have been. We should have just had this kind of cut out or truncated down so we could jump straight to the ship scene with Asherad, because that's where the main kind of crux of this kind of conflict. You get the real juice out of it.
I also think that like it. How far can Kiadi and Anya be from the ship? They should be like right there, so it doesn't feel like the ship is even unguarded with only Asherad. But I guess it is. Like, how far did Anya fall after she was hit? You know,
rolled down a hill behind. I didn't like how Addy went out as well. It's like, oh, a mine, boom. It's like, can you maybe not?
Well,
you even took note of the fact that you could recognize the explosives were in the box 10 seconds previously.
Right, that's the only reason it bothers me. She's all, my force powers tell me that this is like booby trapped. Proceeds to step around.
Yeah. And she follows that up with like all the more reason to look, and she does, and then she steps on the mine.
Yeah, which also I get that she probably used the force to disable the trap or something, but it does not explain that. So it's like, oh look, a trapped box. I'm going to open it. It didn't play right. I was like,
that's what it comes off as.
Yeah, all the more reason to open.
Kind of like an idiot.
Yeah, and then it made that would have been a big a moment as it was by itself, but then obviously proceeding to then step immediately on a mine. It was like, we need Addy out of the scene now. She's played her pointless
If they
part.
had done something to establish that Aurra Singh had kind of laid that almost as a trap, like a bit of a red herring obvious trap for you to disarm so you don't notice this other trap over there, and actually, had it be her strategy rather than Addy Gallia's seeming ineptitude here.
And it seems like that's even likely what has happened. That's supposed to be the point, but it doesn't frame it that way. It frames like there would just happen to be a mine here as well, and therefore it makes it all the worse.
The other thing that could have worked is if Aurra had been watching her and like triggered the detonation, while she was in the proximity, and like that way it's not Adi's fault, but she's still like a believable victim and doesn't have time to make the I sense danger. Oh, I'm gonna ignore it. Yeah, I agree that there's enough you can infer that like she undid that one trap and still was undone. But yeah, it's because these comics in particular are so dialogue based, just like sort of I think Acts of War was. There's like almost no prose. So there's nothing to like set the scene. You know what I mean? We were left only by like the art, the look on her face, and what she's saying aloud. So we can't like really know exactly what's going on. It's a weakness, I would say, of this.
Definitely.
This style, really, not more, because it goes beyond just this arc. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, we have. Oh, sorry.
It's just not been on all the arcs. It's isolated to this and Acts of War so far, I think.
Asherad kind of shoves the senator in his place. He's like, nope, we stay. But you're oath-bound to serve the Republic. I'm not oath-bound. I'm not a knight yet. We stay.
Yeah, it reminds me kind of that scene from Darth Maul Shadowhunter with Obi-Wan at the bar. A little bit. It's like, oh, I'm just a Padawan. I'm like weakest of the Jedi. It's like, what? Kind of pulling rank on that just to show the authority.
It reminds me of something that like Anakin would do, which again, like the similarities between these two characters, like that's kind of like Anakin dialogue, just spoken by a different character, you know?
Definitely.
And we have Aurra actually shooting the guards without announcing herself this time.
Yes, she has learned from her previous mistake. No more rocks for her. Breaking in through the ventilation shaft because how could they possibly have seen that coming? And we get the kind of interaction between her and Asherad.
The fight.
Yeah, I like how he's showing the kind of escalation between her and him. How he's engaging peacefully to start with, and then kind of gets the introduction through the tension and through what she's saying to try and irk him out. Then we get to see the reaction from him. It's not just a case of, oh, I immediately made a mistake. Now if you're in front of me, I'm enraged. It's a case of she has to force it out of him, much like the Dark Woman would.
She insults his father, his teacher, his place in the Jedi, and only after all that does he finally have a reaction. It's more like a gradual build thing rather than just instantaneous.
Which is the nature of the dark side for those who think they're avoiding it. So it's particularly effective in a short burst.
I kind of wished he would have gone a little further than this to justify his position at the end, because I look at this, and aside from him being pissed off, I don't see any transgression here. I don't think he did anything wrong.
See, I completely agree, but I think that kind of lends to the power of the moment for me, because it reminds me of the Core and Horn thing with in Jedi Order series with the Yuzhan Vong. He didn't actually do much wrong at all, but it's the perception of what he did do. The fact that he did feel this emotion, he did feel this rage. Yes, he didn't act on it beyond taking her out of the fight. I mean, he could have killed her right then, and he didn't. So that's to be commended. But it's the fact that he feels as much guilt as he does for what little he did. It bigs up the Jedi side rather than kind of lingering on the dark moment. And I like the idea that I like that idea of kind of personal.
He sees
guilt.
where he could go.
He sees where he could go, and also he's self-critical. Like, I like the idea of that, how that can keep so many Jedi on the good path, even when they slip up. It's the fact that their remorse is what kind of drives them.
I'm in two minds because I agree with that, and that's exactly what his father was talking about. Because he didn't actually fall; he just didn't want to. But at the same time, the fact that he's like, "Oh, I've failed. I should leave. I want to leave the Order now." And the fact that all he did was like self-defense and hit her with a pipe as she was like winning the fight. I kind of wish he'd pushed her on the back foot by drawing on the dark side, and that would have made me buy it more. Like, because it's basically the same thing. It just would have been more of a tangible reason.
It would have felt less like an immediate overreaction after the fact, because he does go straight for, well, I must leave the Order. I must be put on Tatooine. I must be exiled. So I can't hurt anyone. It does kind of come across as like as a bit of a whoa, take a step back. You made one very minor problem, stumble. But yeah, I think it's just the immediacy and the scale he went to. If he'd been just a little bit less ramped up with the reaction, I think it would have worked better. Or as you said, he actually drew on the dark side more.
Yeah, he admits that he wanted to kill her, but it's not really tangibly shown as much as it could have been. So yeah,
I think it also makes a point of when he basically tells his Jedi Masters his feelings on this matter and that he should be exiled, and then Anya Kuro steps up and says, "No, we all have a darkness within us that we need to learn to control. This is just the first manifestation of that. This is your wake-up call. Let me show you how." The thing that occurred to me is, it seems to me that quite a lot of Jedi never actually learn that lesson, and they just dedicate themselves, spend their entire lives trying to purge the dark side from within them and refuse to acknowledge that it's there. Like, not all of them. There are a lot of Jedi who do get their act together, but it seems to me that there are a lot of Jedi who are very much living in denial of that, because they just...
I agree with you in that sense, but I think there could have been more of a reason why he feels Kiadi is not the mentor for him, because I feel like Kiadi should be telling him the exact same thing Anya did. I feel like there's no need for the change in mentor based on that. You know what I mean?
Agreed, yeah. It does seem like very much like a stake of bigging up the Dark Woman without really considering the nature of Kiadi and what we've seen from him thus far. Thus far, we've seen not much training from him towards Asherad, but we've definitely seen compatibility. We've definitely seen the mentality that would allow him to deal with this kind of problem. He's not lenient, but he's definitely considerate of these kind of things. And
he even right here he even says that he'll miss him like he'd miss his own son. So
yeah, which also didn't feel quite earned. Like, I completely understand the sentiment and buy it for the characters, but we've not really seen anything to kind of show that. There's no scene we can look back on and think, oh yeah, this establishes that bond. The same way you can, for example, the brothership between Anakin and Obi-Wan. We haven't
we would have gotten it if they'd kept him on with the series.
Yeah. The series got hijacked away from them. So, that's the reason why. Yeah,
it's more outside meddling.
It's a shame.
I also feel like it's just kind of like. I'm not criticizing Asherad for this because he didn't know what was going to happen, but the only reason that Aurra escapes is because he throws her out of the ship where she can recover from off the ship and leave, instead of just immediately detaining her.
Maybe that was him going too far. He wanted the satisfaction of throwing her down the ramp like a sack of potatoes. Yeah, no. The escape is a bit irksome because she only gets away because she needs to.
Random meteor crash and she slips and you see her slip away.
Yeah, it's just natural incompetence from the Jedi because we need to have Aurra sing in a future story. It's a bit of a nuisance, but at the same time, at least they've tried to justify it.
The part, that's the other thing. They could have avoided all of that if they just have the duel naturally leave the ship. If they'd moved while they were fighting out of there, that would have eliminated both those problems.
Would have extended the duel as well, which would have given them some more action. Because this is a relatively action-light comic, given the nature of the characters involved and how combatant they are.
I'm glad for that. Like,
I am as
action
well.
isn't-
I'm not a fan of it either, but this would be a story where it fits more.
Oh, I am a fan of action. It's just I don't need it all the time, especially not with like this level of threat. You know, it's like typically like less action the better, and more like conflict and politics. Like when you're dealing with not the Sith, or you know what I mean.
Agreed. The early sequence is the perfect example of that for me. It kind of encapsulating that as in a microcosm. But yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about with this, guys? For the conclusion of this one,
I know it's subtle, but I like.
Connor first.
Okay, sorry. Well, for me, it feels almost like it. I kind of get the same feeling from it that I got when reading Darth Bane: Rule of Two, where it feels like they rushed into production based on a first draft. And while there are a lot of really good things in here, there's also a lot of stuff that's just plot convenience. A lot of things that really should have been fleshed out a bit more. But at the same time, the areas where they deliver, they do deliver.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
The construction's a little awkward, but it's still an enjoyable experience with some good character moments for the party involved, and for a see-off for the sort of Kiadi sort of saga. It's not the worst that it could have been, even though we all probably would have liked more for what it was. It was still satisfying.
It's one of those storylines where if I was ever adapting this storyline to film, I'd be Hobbit trilogying the F out of it.
Yeah, it definitely needs an attachment to make it work, or at least something to refine it. Because I agree that it's a solid piece overall. You know, I enjoy it, and it's definitely one I look back on with fondness. But at the same time, first draft. It needed a lot of shakedowns. It needed to be refined, tweaked, extended, shortened here and there. It needed more work before this was ready for release, in my opinion. And it being in the state that it currently is, it's just clunky. There are nuggets of gold here, but the overall execution is just clunky.
I think
you're looking for the diamond in the rough when you're reading this storyline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's often like this discussion of subjective and objective when it comes to like an evaluation of stuff, and I think that it's better than average, but it's got flaws. But I do enjoy it. At the end of the day, I like it, but I don't think it's great. Yeah.
But yeah, those have been our thoughts on Star Crash and A Hunt for Aurra Sing. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Let us know in the comment section down below anything you think we've missed or want to cover in greater detail, and we shall get to it at some point in the future. I am Retty4, and I still don't have an outro.
Gridget91, thanks for watching.
Evan over 95, we hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later.
Jenserai1 signing off. Good night, YouTube.
Goodbye.